the same opiate receptors as morphine and
Yep.
heroin.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't get you high or relieve pain, but its expression is to make you crave more of the things that have wheat and grains in them, like your bread, pasta, cereal, granola.
So it has all of the downsides of recreational drugs and none of the upsides. Great. Sounds like a great reason to put grain in your diet.
Yeah, so you get addicted to these.
Hello, carnivores, and welcome to session number 92 of the #1 bodybuilding podcast in the United Kingdom. Daniel Trevor is a heart attack survivor turned wellness warrior. He is the author of the Unholy Trinity and will be discussing why carbs, sugar, and oils are making everyone fat, sick, and addicted to poor food choices. A good friend and client of mine, also named Daniel, gave this book to me. It's called The Unholy Trinity as a gift exactly 10 weeks ago in Phoenix, Arizona, which was my last competition where I earned my pro bodybuilding card. Since then, two of our newer clients and I have just recently finished reading it. And now we have lots of questions for how bodybuilders and the average man or woman who just wants to look their best really can improve their diet. So Daniel is a citizen scientist and a serial entrepreneur who has created several startup businesses from scratch, including a high-tech CTI, which is computer-telophony integration company that eventually grew to over 300 employees and 3,000 independent contractors. Daniel has been featured on YouTube from everything from his inventions to his research. He's even an investor on the side. And hopefully by the end of this conversation, we'll be good friends too. And so, Mr. Trevor, welcome to Carnivore Coach's Corner.
Oh, come on, Daniel. No, Mr. Trevor, you're making me feel like 100 years old there. Hey, it's Coach Colt, the fit and chiseled bass player, father and husband from Montana. I'm glad to be here. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot. I guess I'm just flattered that you know me that well too. So it's great to meet you. Great to see you in person, or I guess virtually. And I'm just really thrilled to talk about your book, man. We have a lot in common.
Yeah, wow, that's great. That's great. I really appreciate you having me.
Cool. Well, what inspired you to write this book in the first place, man?
Oh, well, that's a bit of a dramatic story, but I had a heart attack and almost died.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that was about 5 years ago. And having studied technical data throughout my life, I decided to take a dive into the science to find out how could this happen to me. I thought I was Mr. Healthy, right?
Yeah.
And what I discovered really shocked and infuriated me. And I started chronicling all of my research and writing. And then I got to a point where I thought, I need to share this with my brother and sister, fellow humans, to warn them that what we've been told to eat for decades is killing us. And we've been just fed a bunch of lies and bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
And 100%. It's all vested interests. I mean, I think in my book, well, first of all, let me warn you a little bit, you and your audience. See, I'm just a lower class street kid from Philly. And, so I'm a little bit rough around the edges. So, and there's this old saying that goes, you can take the kid out of Philly, but you can't take the Philly out of the kid. So if I get a little streety on you, so it's with my accent or whatever, try not to hold it against me. But anyway, so what I tried to do is, I think of the book as three things, basically. First of all, it's a how-to book on how I reversed 4 comorbidities, which I'll tell you about, that I didn't discover until I had the heart attack because the doctors don't do the right tests and, that kind of thing. And then it's also a bit of an expose on big food, big pharma, and big medicine, which I call the other unholy trinity. Because it's just so much money involved and it's more money and profits over what's good for human beings. Now, having said that, I'm sure there's wonderful, beautiful people in all three of those sectors, but it's just certain areas, which I go into in the book. It's not everybody. Because let's face it, we have 24-hour heroes in our emergency rooms and, that are, suturing up the wounds and removing bullets and steering wheels from our chests and everything. and they're 24-hour heroes, you know? And then you have your, and then there's another thing. It's also what you might call a data and situation analysis of this. In 1930, the obesity rate was 1%. We are now approaching 50% in the United States in under 100 years. And you got to say, what the hell is happening? Never before in human history has a population gotten so fat and so sick so quickly.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, and so when you pull the strings, you find out that it's the unholy trinity that was introduced in the 20th century that never existed before. I mean, we've had grains and sugars and that kind of thing, but never in the amounts and concentrations as introduced in the 20th century.
And not in the same types as they are now. Like an apple today is not the same as what our ancestors would have been competing against the chimpanzees for.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it all changed there because in the 20th century, you see, in 1900 and right around 1900, people died of infectious diseases like pneumonia, tuberculosis, influenza, that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now our biggest killers are heart disease and cancer, right?
Right.
And the very first medically recorded heart attack wasn't until 1912. Cancer wasn't even like a thing, as they say, until the 30s. And so what happened? It was just, like I said, the introduction of let me explain what I mean by carbs, sugar, and oils.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, when I say carbs, I'm talking about your industrially processed grains that they turn into bread, pasta, cereal, waffles, pizza crust, pancakes, you know, tortillas, and on that way.
Yeah.
And then you have your
now would you include would you include like clean sources of carbohydrates like white potatoes, rice, and just kind of like what most people would classify as quote clean carbs in that category, or is it like mainly?
I'm afraid not.
For sure is the worst.
Yeah, wheat and grains are they are the worst. Yes, they really are. But it depends on the person. You have to be able to measure what you're putting in your mouth when you eat.
Mm-hmm.
What's it doing to your sugar and your insulin levels, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, we just, you know, it's the grains, and then we have the candy cake, ice cream, soda, fruit
Mm-hmm.
juice, pastries, which is a combination of the wheat and the grains and the sugar. And then you have your seed oils, the vegetable oils, which I'm sure you probably know about, which are they were never in the human diet until about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, they actually didn't exist until 1865 with cottonseed farming in southern part of the United States, right? And it was considered a toxic waste. And then they had other forms of these vegetable oils, and they were used as machinery lubricant in the Industrial Revolution, which is the late 1900s, early 20th century.
Yeah.
And, you know, these two guys from Europe came over to Ohio, William Proctor and James Gamble, Proctor and Gamble. And they looked at a bucket of it, and it looked like lard to them. They thought, hey, why don't we sell it to people? We'll make some money. So they came up with this product called CRISCO. And that started flying off the shelves in 1911. Right. And then it wasn't discovered until the 90s that Crisco contains more trans fats than any other food or cooking aid or anything like that. And trans fats have been established to be the most dangerous fat you can put in your body, contributing to heart disease and so forth like that. So It was pretty wild. So that was never in our diet. And I mean, there are some vegetable oils that are okay, like authentic olive oil, you know, not canola, but coconut oil.
Yeah, I was going to ask you specifically about coconut oil and avocado oil, because I'm a fan of both of those. Not avocado oil, but an avocado every now and then. It's, you know, rarely, but coconut oil in particular because of its high MCT oil and because of C8s and exogenous ketones. Those two together. Oh man, before a workout, that's kind of like my best source of fast acting energy. So like
no, those are great. Those are fine. I'm talking about what you like soybean oil, canola, you know, sunflower, safflower. There's about 8 of them that are just
or
deadly.
maybe like a poorly processed olive oil too. That'll have too much omega.
Yeah, well, when I say authentic olive oil, what I mean is, see, these days you really have to be careful, because what some unethical companies have done is they'll start off with some cheap, canola oil or something like that, and then they'll fill the other 80% with, or they'll just have a small amount of olive oil, and then the 80% is either canola oil or soybean oil, something cheap and deadly, right? So you really got to make sure it's authentic olive oil. That's what I meant when I said authentic.
Yeah, okay, for sure.
But yeah, no, I'm with you. I use C8, like you mentioned, MCT oil. Actually, I use an MCT oil powder, because the MCT oil, I have 1 cup of coffee in the morning, right?
It's faster acting if it's in a powder, right?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I feel like it is. I feel like the energy hits me just a little bit quicker if it's in a powder than if it's in an oil.
Well, my stomach doesn't agree with the MCT oil, but I'm fine with the MCT oil powder. But again, it's the C8, because there's, as you know, there's C8, C10, C12, and C8. There was a study, I even have that in the book, that shows that it's way more it has a better ability to create ketones. It's more ketogenic than the others. So I always go for it. It's a little more expensive, the C8, but that's what I use too. So I put that in my coffee along with a little bit of creatine, and that's for brain power, because creatine is really not just for muscular buildup, but it's also good for your cognitive abilities too. So I'll put a little bit of that, and I just have 1 12-ounce mug in the morning. Heavy whipping cream. You just have to, when you learn, in the morning, you can't use, I ask, because I go into intermittent fasting, as you know, in chapter 8, and you have to know what can break a fast and what won't break a fast. And what will break a fast is carbs and protein.
Yep.
So, and then it's so incredible to work out in a fasted state. I don't know if you know about do that yet or not, but because the results are just amazing.
My workouts are 10 times better in a fasted state, and that's always what I recommend too. Yeah, especially and if I had any doubts about just the benefits of training fasted in general, which I didn't, that chapter that you read would completely disprove that. I think it's just you explain it so beautifully, just scientifically, why I'm feeling the way that I do fasted when I work out versus when I have food in my stomach. Man, it's like I don't want my blood flow and all my water in my body going to my intestines to digest the food that I just ate. I want it in my muscle bellies doing fucking bicep curls, because that's what they're supposed to be doing, right? Or I want my blood flow in my brain if I'm gonna be like on a conversation like this, which is why I'm fasted right now. So
yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, when I go to the gym and I get in a conversation with the other guys, and they can't believe that I'm in a fasted state while I'm there. And so, but basically, what you're talking about reminds me to tell you and your viewers is that, you see, my book is basically I want to try to mirror what these evolutionarily developed meat bodies are used to doing and eating and moving and that kind of thing for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't have refrigerators and microwaves and pantries and stuff like that. We were lucky to eat once a day.
Right.
Sometimes we were starving while we were hunting. So
100%. Yeah, you have a lot to say about how detrimental snacking can be just in general to a diet, whether it's good food or bad food. And I'm 100% with you there. Even as a professional competitive bodybuilder, I find nothing but upsides to the way that I feel and to my physique, everything, if I'm eating meals less frequently. And whether that's an occasional prolonged fast thrown in there or what, that definitely helps me to be able to see it even better. But just not snacking throughout the day, nothing pre-workout, nothing post-workout. No, 1 or 2 meals a day.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, because what I tell people if I get to meet them before they read my book, or I let them know, I say, look, don't miss the first 8 or 9 pages of chapter 1, because that will carry you through the rest of the book, and it'll get you into the frame of mind that you need to be in always. And that is this. Starting on page 2 of chapter 1, start with page 1, of course, but on chapter 2, I get into the 2 most important players in the processing of the food that you put in your mouth.
Yeah.
And that those 2 are glucose, also known as blood sugar, and insulin. And what happens is when you eat something, your glucose goes up, your blood sugar goes up, and then the pancreas senses that and secretes insulin to bring it down or keep it in a safe range, a normal range. And that's it's a normal process that goes on through life. But if you're eating the wrong food and or too frequently, you'll have your elevated blood levels and elevated insulin levels hour after hour, day after day, week after week. And that soon develops what's called insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. And hyperinsulinemia, that's just a fancy sounding name for, it's just hyper, too much, insulin. Emia means in the blood, too much insulin in the blood, hyperinsulinemia. So that's as simple like there. And those 2 things result in prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, and then the ensuing inflammation that comes about. And those things are so important to understand, because you don't want to get to the point where you're so insulin resistant and hyperinsulinemic that you develop a diabetic physiology. Because here's the key thing, Colt, is that the source root cause of all the major diseases of modernity are caused by having some degree of a diabetic physiology: heart attacks, strokes, certain cancers, PCOS, amputations, Alzheimer's, cataracts, and blindness. The list goes on. It's amazing. So, and that's why I've labeled it I don't have this in the book, but I'll get it in a revision, but I've labeled it the gateway disease. Once you get but the amazing thing is most people don't know that they have some degree of diabetic physiology because of this. Most doctors don't do the right test. Check out this shocking stat. And this is a recent study, like just a few years ago. And that's like 10 minutes ago in the medical community, because, it takes so long for new science to get down to the front lines of the doctors, let alone how long it takes to get into the medical curriculum of the schools. Anyway, this was out of Johns Hopkins, and they did this study, and they found that 74% of doctors, now we're talking general practitioners, family physicians, internists, and cardiologists, 74% do not know how to properly diagnose for prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. It's like, are you kidding me? That's our biggest epidemic that's causing all of the obesity and the cancers and the heart disease and so forth. And, it's just, what most doctors do is they'll only test A1C, your HbA1c, or fasting blood glucose, one or the other, or both. And they don't do this other one, which I'll tell you about. Because, because so many people can test normal for A1C and fasting blood glucose and still be a raging type 2 diabetic. That was me. I tested normal. Usually the first sign of diabetes or, prediabetes or type 2 diabetes is you're overweight. You're getting a gut, that kind of thing. But so many people have guts and they're overweight, and the doctor doesn't test it. What they don't test is, and I have all this in the book, you'll get to that part. Mm-hmm. It's called the OGTT with insulin, oral glucose tolerance test with insulin. And that will determine whether you're, pre-diabetic, type 2 diabetic, or normal. And there were these 2 big studies. I'll just tell you about one of them. And this was like, 93? 2023, something like that. So It's very recent. And it was out of the American College of Cardiology, which is the top place on the planet for cardiology. And they found that, only 6.8% of the population is metabolically healthy. That means 93.2% of the population is metabolically unhealthy. It's like, so most people have some degree of it and they just don't know it because doctors don't do the right tests. And the test itself, I think it's like $60, and that's why I reached out to, this is very important to tell your audience and you, is that as I was writing the book, I'm finding out I went to YouTube University and Google University and PubMed and all these books, and I had just immersed myself. And I discovered this guy named Dr. Ford Brewer out of Johns Hopkins, and he's taught and trained thousands of doctors over the years, right? And he's brilliant at all the testing of, achieving great metabolic health and preventing heart attacks and strokes, which are biggest heart disease is the biggest, biggest killer. Strokes are the number one cause of permanent disability, right?
Okay.
And so I reached out to him and I said, writing this book, and I think he probably rolled his eyes a little bit. He said, "Oh, God, one of these." I said, "Can you write me a chapter in my book that delineates what are the most important blood labs and scans that anyone can buy inexpensively online without needing a doctor's prescription? That way they themselves can find out if they've got something lurking, ready to jump out, or they're just fine, or somewhere in between where, hey, they need to put some attention on that." So he did that. That's chapter 22. And he calls it Don't Guess, Test, because most people, they, you talk to people about, your family or friends or something, and you go, you suggest some tests they could do because you notice their smoking habit or their belly or their sugar habit or something. And you find a gentle moment where you can say, hey, there's some tests that alerted me to the truth about my own physiology and everything. And they'll smile and say something like, "Yeah, but I'm not sick." I say, "Yeah, well, I wasn't sick either. Look what happened to me. I almost disappeared on you, So again, these are silent diseases that we don't know. So, it's not so much for you because you're in great shape and everything, but more for your parents and older, because I believe that if you're either like 35 or older or overweight or both, and you're not testing, that's like driving down the road without a steering wheel or a speedometer. You will crash into something. You will crash and you're going to go, wait, how did I know Uncle Joe had it, but I didn't know it was going to happen to me? So you have to test to find out where you are. If you're just fine, hey, great. Money well spent.
Yeah.
But, you really have to have that information. And now I just recently made a deal with the largest lab testing service in the country, QUEST Diagnostics, and right on my website, you can go in there and order them. And I
was worried you were going to say Quest Nutrition. I was like, whoa,
no. QUEST Diagnostics. They have thousands of locations.
Wow.
Throughout the United States. Mm-hmm. So you can go on there. Like I said, the EOGTT is $60, $69, something like that. And then there's other ones you need to get to just find out if you've got the plaque in your arteries, that kind of thing. And so, it's easily done these days. And when I say my website, of course, I'm talking about danieltrevor.com. And, your viewers can see a short 7-minute video.
That's an extremely helpful resource that you mentioned too, by the way. So thanks a lot for that. I'm going to plug that in the notes for those that are listening.
Yeah. It just tells my story, that video. And then underneath it, I'm showing off all the amazing world-class opinion leaders that gave me endorsements. It's like, wow, because I didn't know if I had anything good or not, so I started reaching out and sending them out. And I really got some wonderful, endorsements for the book from just, New York Times bestselling authors who are also physicians and, even some carnivores, not even some, but, I even have Dr. Philip Ovadia, who's cardiologist, done over 3,200 heart surgeries, and he's carnivore. And he wrote me a killer endorsement. Let me read one line from the back. I'm so proud of this. He says,
"Well, this is encouraging to see too, because you didn't hear mainstream doctors talking about this kind of stuff 20 years ago.
No.
Now that all this anecdotal evidence is coming out, all these new studies that are coming out that I wasn't aware of until you pointed them out and documented them so wonderfully in your book. So sorry, go ahead.
Doctors don't get into that. He says, this is Dr. Ovadia. He says, to anyone who doesn't want to see me or one of my colleagues standing over them in a hospital bed, read this book. I was so great. Yeah. So anyway, so and then I have Ken Berry, and they could see all that when they get to the website. But anyway, yeah, the doctors, see, you can't hold it against them. They can't be the doctors that they wanted to be when they first got into it, because medical schools, they don't teach this kind of stuff.
No.
You see, you got to understand that the medical schools are underwritten and funded by Big Pharma. They want them reaching for the prescription pad. They don't want them talking to their patient about diet and exercise and what's your carb load these days, and are you getting to the gym? They don't want any of that. I mean, but if you take your
they're going to be out of because they'll kind of be out of a job. It's like it sounds harsh, but it's just such a conflict of interest. I mean, the products that they sell, Lipitor, statins, blah blah blah. Like there's a big profit margin in these, and they're highly addictive. And once you get on, you're going to have a hell of a time getting off of it. And
I'm telling you. Yes.
And so there's just no reason to fund it. There's no reason to fund those studies. When Dr. Anthony Chafee and I were talking a couple days ago, we were talking about how there's studies around statins and LDL, like what you and I are describing, that aren't being published because the people that are doing the studies aren't satisfied with the results.
Oh man, wait till you get to my chapter 18. Statins.
It's a joke.
I go deep into the whole cardiovascular area for anybody that's interested in that.
That's my favorite one. But if you're listening, you should go get his audiobook for that part, because I can hear how pissed off you are in your voice when you're reading your own audiobook on that chapter.
Oh man, yeah.
That one's gold, man. Gold.
Yeah, it's just that they they just don't talk to you about that because they don't learn it in the schools. But, if you take your little dog Poochie to the vet, one of the first things they ask, so what are you feeding little Poochie? When's the last time you ever heard any doctor say, hey, so what's your diet like? Are you getting to the gym? Are you walking? Are you, doing something? They just don't. It's just not covered. It's just not part of the whole area. Speaking of that, there is, I know this is more for, your audience is probably a bit younger than, the people who really need to hear this, but there was a large study called the ischemia trial. And it was this big $100 million government funded trial. And it was a randomized control trial. And basically it was, they had two groups. One group, they gave invasive procedures, meaning CABG, coronary artery bypass graft. That's open heart surgery like Dr. Ovadia does all the time, or a PCI, percutaneous coronary intervention, which is a stent. So they either got open heart surgery, bypass, or stents, one or more stents. And the other group, they sent them in the direction of lifestyle. Get off lose 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, whatever, get back to the gym, start walking, stop eating the junk, get off the couch and stop eating the Cheetos, that kind of thing. And they followed them closely for 4 years. And at the end of the 4 years, see, what they wanted to do is they wanted to show that these invasive procedures were the shit. They were the real deal. And they were what we should put all the backing towards. And they found that it was a failure. There was no difference in prevention of heart attacks and strokes. And then there was the Orbita trial, same, and the Courage trial, same failures. And so, you would think that after these failures, they even wrote out, I mean, these trials just rocked the cardiology community. And they just said, these trials failed to show that these invasive procedures were any better than going to the gym. And I'll bet, Colt, that if they would have used let's say a low carb, keto, carnivore, some kind of other, like some kind of diet that puts you into ketosis, the lifestyle one would have far outperformed the other one. And instead there was just even, right? Mm-hmm. So they didn't do that. But anyway, so next time, if you have, whether it's your parents or some older person, and their cardiologist saying, I think we should do a stent or show him these studies I have in chapter 17. Yeah. Then he'll know that and then you can ask him again, hey, so explain to me again why you think we should do this stent. Because
I have 4 or 5 of those studies that you're referring to just kind of bookmarked on my smartphone actually, and so whenever I do have one of these conversations with one of our clients, and they're kind of like talking through this stuff with their doctor because their doctor's like, oh, your LDL is so high. I'm like, okay, show your doctor this study, show your doctor this study, just ask what he has to
Exactly.
say about it, and then
Yeah,
they don't.
yeah, yeah,
They,
exactly.
it's funny how they stop pushing the statins all of a sudden. It's like,
I know.
fuck, they're onto us.
Yeah, that I really pulled the wool behind. I mean, I pulled the curtain down from the whole statin area in chapter 18, as you probably have seen or will
Big
see
time.
when you get to it. But yeah, they see when you take the statins. I mean, I went through it. After my heart attack, I would listen to everything they said. They told me this and that, and I got the whole talk about low fat and this and that, and then I started diving into it myself, and they had me on this high dose statin, and oh my god, I must have lost 30 IQ points at least. I got
Yeah.
really stupid. That's why they call it the statin stupid. But
Change it.
for a lot of people, the side effects can be pretty damn nasty, like road rage and psychoses, lower IQ, aches and pains, and all that kind of thing.
I have
And then,
family members that can attest to that. Yep. It's
yeah,
100,
so
100% from what you're describing. Okay.
yeah, but there's a way to do it. See, they have the wrong target. They're targeting cholesterol, which has always been a fake, phony science target anyway. And statins are very successful at lowering cholesterol, but that's something that the brain needs lots of. So
Right.
no wonder you're going to get statin stupid. It's just, and I went through it. I was like, I'd have to reread sentences, and it was a struggle. But
Wow.
yeah, and then they told the whole science. And it's interesting. I have a study in there. It's because patients, they want to know, how much longer will I live if I take a statin every day for the rest of my life? Valid question, right?
Hmm.
So these researchers set out to find out, yeah, how much do people live? How much longer do they live? Is it months, decades? Yeah. And what they just, and I got this study from Dr. Robert Lustig, and large 92,135 patients, right? And they found that, oh, this is amazing. For people taking statins for primary prevention, in other words, no heart attack yet, their doctor wants you to take the statin only because of some goofy, stupid information he's giving you about LDL, which we can get into,
Hmm.
or for whatever reason. And you've got those people in the group that took for prevention, they lived a big 3 days longer than those in the other group not taking a statin. And those in the group taking statins for secondary prevention, in other words, they already had a heart attack, lived a big 4 days longer. I was on with Curry Mann, and he was on statins for 10 years. Curry Mann. You should look him up, also
Yeah.
carnivore. And it changed his life, carnivore.
Hmm.
And he said, look, if you would have told me that before, because he had so many side effects with the statins, he says, I would have said, hey, here, take 3 days. I'm not taking these statins. You can have 3 days of my life back, right? I thought that was very funny. But anyway, so it's like you just, the benefits are just so teeny tiny that you don't even, because there's other ways of getting out of danger than that. See, the target is not cholesterol, it's the inflammation in the arteries caused by the diabetic physiology that
Right.
you've
Well,
created.
and it's the plaque too, but the LDL doesn't become plaque, from what I understand now after reading it. But correct me if I'm wrong. And unless it's in the context of a high carbohydrate diet or a high smoking diet, but even
Well,
carbohydrates cause plaque buildup way more. Otherwise, that LDL would be harmless.
yeah, well, no, here's the deal. It's a great question, too. Great comment. And here's the deal on the LDL. See, most doctors, they're taught only to look at total LDL. And they never do these other two studies. One's called the lipoprotein fractionation,
Hmm.
or a NMR lipoprofile. What do those do? LDL, there's two types of LDL. There's pattern A and pattern B. Pattern A LDL is this large, fluffy, buoyant, benign LDL. And the other one is pattern B, and that's the small, dense LDL particles, which are the deadly, born to be wild guys,
Yeah.
right? And that's what you get from eating the unholy trinity and the carbs and the sugar and all that, right? You get these small, dense LDL particles. However, when you get off of the unholy trinity and all the carbs, and you go to a low carb, keto, carnivore, ketovore, whatever, you turn those small, dense LDL particles, which turn into the soft plaque, into these large, buoyant, beach balls, as opposed to the small, dense LDL particles, which I think of as marbles. And so they never test for that, and they just want to give you a statin to bring that down. But if you just eliminate those, all those nasty foods, you're going to turn those small, dense LDL particles into the large, fluffy ones that are healthy. Because, that's the small, dense LDL particles are what cause the soft, inflamed plaque that stores underneath the arteries underneath the arteries, subendothelial, as they call it. And they build up over time. And let me tell you what happens in a heart attack. And I'll try not to get too sciencey, but after years of eating bad foods and you're overweight and you're or obese and you've got this hyperinsulinemia, or diabetic physiology of some extent, you have all this soft inflamed plaque underneath there. And at some future point, especially if it runs in your genetics in your family, under some stress, whether it's physical, emotional, or both, what happens is this soft inflamed plaque that's underneath the artery, it ruptures through the already damaged endothelial, which is the lining of the arteries. It spills into the lumen, which is where the blood flows. It touches blood, creates a clot. It breaks off and it goes downstream, so to speak. And if it goes to your heart, you have a heart attack. If it goes to your brain, you have a stroke, which tells you it can be at many different places around the body, not just in the heart. So anyway, you don't want to have this plaque buildup, this small, dense LDL plaque buildup, because that's what causes the heart attacks and strokes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I was the first half of that chapter made a lot of sense, but when you started talking about like the different particle sizes, I kind of got confused around it, and now I think I got it. Especially after you just explained it again.
Well, I have a simple analogy that I have. I think it's in chapter 19, which is what you're probably talking about, right? And where I get into all that. See, chapter 19, I have this analogy where just think of your arteries as, let's say, cobblestone streets, with a lot of cracks and crevices and where things can get caught up, right? And if you threw out some large light beach balls, they would just bounce around freely and, benign, nothing would happen. But if you threw out some marbles, they would get caught in the cracks and crevices and that kind of thing, and eventually go subendothelial. They'll go underneath, and then they get caught up in what's called the intima media space, and that's where they build up plaque over time. And so you don't want the small, dense LDL particles, the marbles. You want the large, fluffy beach boys. Beach Boys. There's our music. There's a band. Flash from the past. The beach balls.
Beach balls.
So yeah, because they're harmless, and so that's the analogy to simplify it that I give in the book there.
Cool. On page 45, you talk a lot about the glycocalyx and plaque buildup. So, I guess just one more question on that to make sure I understand this correctly is that
Sure.
High LDL doesn't necessarily mean you're at risk for heart disease, and that the plaque buildup is really what we want to be paying the most attention to, obviously. But how does sugar damage our glycocalyx? I hear Dr. Kilt teach on this term a lot, and this is something that I've just been taking a bit deeper of a dive into myself. And so, would you be able to maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, how I first got into that was I discovered that, well, first of all, in my book, as you know, I've got, images and charts and graphs and so forth, because I want to make it easier for the reader to understand. Yeah. And
it's on page 45 for the listeners.
Yeah. And well, just before that on page, well, it depends on which version you have, because the first version is maybe it might be 2 pages off depending, but it's where Well, I have an image of the glycocalyx. It's blown up. What happened was the history goes back like this. From 1900 to 1955, there's a chart on heart disease and heart attacks. This is 1900. This is 1955. And 1955 is when President Eisenhower had a heart attack. And it was a big deal because a lot of people were dying and dropping in the prime of their life. And so they're going, wow, what's going on? So, see, back then, smoking was an epidemic, right? And later on, when they discovered this thing called electron microscopy, where they could snake up these teeny tiny cameras, they could see this thing called the glycocalyx that they named it. And the glycocalyx acts as it's this fuzz-like lining of the artery walls, and it acts as the first line of protection against these small, dense LDL particles. Smoking destroys the glycocalyx, right?
Yep.
And so that was the cause of all the heart disease back then. And then what happened was there was this joker named Ansel Keys that came along and didn't know anything about cardiology or anything. And he had this theory that it was the meat and the butter and the cheese, that it was clogging up the arteries and that we all need to go low fat or non-fat, kind of thing. And that's where all that bullshit started. And then, people got hooked, or they got attracted by this analogy that he gave. And it was like, yeah, it's like a shower drain where you got the meat. Where you've got the soap and the grease and the hair and the gook, and it all clogs up. And people get that idea in their mind. You can't convince them of anything else, right?
Right.
And so it reminds me of Mark Twain, our common sense philosopher from the 1800s. He had this quote, and he said, it's easier to fool people than to convince them they have been fooled.
That's one of my favorites. One of my favorite Mark Twain quotes, for sure.
It's just so crazy. So anyway, what happened was Big Food came along, and they started removing all the fat from their foods, and they replaced it with carbs and sugars. Because they had to make it palatable, because when you take fat out of things, it doesn't taste so good, right? So then that happened, about within 10 years of that, and they started doing, and then the food pyramid came in the 70s, and oh my God. And if you look at the chart that I also have in chapter 1, maybe that's chapter 2, where it's, the food pyramid's introduced here, and the obesity rate goes up like this, right?
Yeah.
So it's just amazing that you're supposed to eat, so many servings of carbs and all that kind of thing, mostly the grains, which are the deadliest. But the glycocalyx, and the reason why, see, glyco, that comes from the word sugar, glyco, like glycemic and glucose and all that, right?
Start at chapter 2. Sorry for that food pyramid diagram. But yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And then the glycocalyx is already sugar, and when you bombard it with more sugar, it just dissolves that glycocalyx, because it's already made of so much sugar, and it's kind of like getting an overdose, and it just dissolves. It dissolves away, and it can't act as that first line of protection against these small, dense LDL particles that are going to give you the plaque, and you're getting them from eating the Unholy Trinity.
So
right?
in that case, that would make high LDL potentially a threat. But here again, if you're on a species appropriate diet, and if you're eating like humans should be eating, it's not going to consist of foods that are going to be damaging your glycocalyx in the first place.
Yeah, but let me distinguish again. It's not just the total LDL, because that's what doctors, they make the mistake. They only go with total LDL, as opposed to knowing what is the pattern A, the large, fluffy, buoyant ones, and do I have a lot of pattern B? And in fact, there's two researchers you might enjoy. One's Dave Feldman and Nick Norwitz, and they've done a lot of studies. And they've even labeled, what do they call it? And this is you and me. They are, oh God, what's the name they called it for? Lean mass hyperresponder. And a lean mass hyperresponder, like I said, is either you or I or both of us, is where they're metabolically incredibly healthy because they're eating proper species-specific foods and these bodies are designed for, but their LDL is out the roof. And, you show your, I saw this one cardiologist, and because I won't tell you how I got to see him, but anyway, he says, so how's your LDL? And I knew right away, I started, oh my God, this guy doesn't know anything, right? And he doesn't know. I said, yeah, well, it's out the roof, but my HDL is in the 90s, and that's like Mr. Superman. My triglycerides are in the 30s, which is really low. And, everything's in the proper place, but my LDL was probably, total LDL was probably, I don't know, 265, something like that, which is considered, most doctors would faint if they saw that. But I was lean, fit, muscular. By this time,
most doctors tell you to get treatment is if your LDL gets over 200 at all, right?
Oh, they want it under 100. They want it under 100, but it's just all backwards, and it's just.
Of course, they want it there, but I don't want it there. What's up, carnivores? Friendly reminder not to overtrain your muscles or your mind for that matter. So we're going to take a break for a couple quick minutes. Bad Coach Call Out of the Week is from the one and only Richard Smith this time. And before that, here's our featured listener inspiring success story and podcast review. So our listener inspiring success story of the week is from Chris Vilela. He is from Quebec, Canada. And here's what he has to say after just starting the carnivore diet. You need to follow this guy on Instagram. I'm going to plug it in the show notes. And he is actually going through the time to take really good pictures and really good videos of everything that he's eating. So total stud. Love working with this gentleman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Chris from Canada.
Hi, Colt. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. My workouts have been spot on and my meal plans are perfect. I'm feeling stronger and I'm just ready to take things to the next level. Yeah.
So yeah, make sure you follow him on Instagram, everybody. It is CHRISVIONE with the blue check mark next to it. Way to go, man. In other news, there is still no shortage of fraudulent coaches and fraudulent online resources, quote unquote. So beware who you listen to and where you're doing your research from. Chat GBT. We can all trust that resource, right? Wrong. Listen to this argument that my coach, Richard Smith, just got into with Chat GBT. This is crazy.
And look at what happens when I tell Chat GPT it is wrong. I am going to show you, when it comes to nutrition, health and well-being, why I know more than your doctor, why I know more than your search engine, why I know more than Chat GPT. I've had so much abuse and negative comments on the information that I've posted recently in regards to people who have fact-checked the content that I've put up and referenced clinical trials and research papers to disprove the information that I'm putting out there. I'm going to prove to you today that the information that you find on your search engine, including Google and ChatGPT, is misinformation. These platforms are not designed to give you information. They are there to sell products. They are there for profitability. And I'm going to prove this with one of the statements that I've made recently. Human beings use the shikimate pathway in order to create neurotransmitters, which is blocked by plant compounds, particularly from grains and fiber, and the herbicide glyphosate. By doing so, it leads to a whole host of mental health problems, anxiety, and depression. ChatGPT's answer is that this is not possible because humans do not have the shikimate pathway. A ChatGPT response which clearly states that humans do not have the shikimate pathway. Look at what happens when I tell ChatGPT it is wrong. What the f***? You are absolutely right. I know I am. This is why I've posted it. A normal person isn't going to have the knowledge or expertise to challenge a search engine and will accept the original answer. Most clinical trials and research papers are funded by the companies who have a vested interest in the result. This is why you cannot trust them. The title nor the researcher's verdict rarely match the data found within the trials, but the end result is manipulated to suit shareholder vested interests. Unless you know how to properly read a research paper and analyze the data without pre-existing bias, stop sending me references of papers that you have clearly not read yourself. Papers in which the results do not actually have any relevance on the real data found within. Red meat heals, saturated fats are good, and fiber is bad. Look at what happens when I tell Chat.
Hard to argue that. Okay, so there you go, everybody. And last thing before we get into the show is big shout out to Cameron Thrall for writing in for our Spotify podcast review of the week. Really, really appreciate it. He says, I've been strict carnivore for 3 years after spending 3 years at 90 to 100% carnivore before committing. My testosterone is low, yet I still build muscle, feel great, and perform at a high level. We need to rethink how we view testosterone. It's not the sole factor of strength, energy, or muscle growth. The body adapts beyond a lab test, and so if you're serious, go all in. Cameron, I 100% agree with that, man. There's lots of high-level carnivore athletes that have lower testosterone levels, but who cares? Even Sean Baker, right? If you don't have any symptoms of low testosterone, then don't lose your shirt over it. That's just my advice. Your body probably has all it needs to get the job done. Apparently it does, living the lifestyle that you do. So keep crushing it, mate. And I think that was a wonderful way to sum up our conversation that you wrote in on and replied to, which was number 89. Methylation Masterclass, Menopause, and Meetups with Dr. Robert Kiltz. That was a cool conversation. We covered like a million different topics. So that's pretty much it for our interlude, everybody. And we are back into the meat of the episode with Daniel Trevor.
I saw this one cardiologist, and because I won't tell you how I got to see him, but anyway, he says, so how's your LDL? And I knew right away, I started, oh my God, this guy doesn't know anything, right? And he doesn't know. I said, yeah, well, it's out the roof, but my HDL is in the 90s, and that's like Mr. Superman. My triglycerides are in the 30s, which is really low, and, everything's in the proper place, but my LDL was probably, total LDL was probably, I don't know, 265, something like that, which is considered, most doctors would faint if they saw that. But I was lean, fit, muscular. By this time,
most doctors tell you to get treatment if your LDL gets over 200 at all, right?
Oh, they want it under 100. They want it under 100, but it's just all backwards, and it's
of course they want it there, but you and I don't want it there.
They want it there, and the big pharma wants it there too, because most 75. What they found, there's another study I have in the book. I can't remember which chapter, but 75% of the people who have a heart attack have normal, quote, normal cholesterol levels. So it's not the cholesterol, it's not the LDL, the HD, so you really got to look at all the proper testing. And that's why I felt so lucky to have been able to get all that data into the book, because I don't want people to have to go through what I went through. And because everybody's valuable, your family needs you, your friends and family, the mankind needs you. You need to contribute your talents to the world and continue to do that rather than succumb to big food, big pharma, and big medicine. And, so big food, I'm so glad to see Robert F. Kennedy getting in there, and he's going to be going after those guys. Because here's the thing. You probably didn't know this. Most people don't know. But in the 80s, the big tobacco companies, smoking was going down, right? Their stats were going down. They were losing money. The big tobacco companies started buying up the big food companies. They bought Nabisco, Kraft, General Foods, and they brought their addiction scientists over to the big food. And when I say addiction scientists, I'm not talking about how to get people to not be addicted. They brought these addiction scientists because they wanted them to eat more of it,
No, like, I know it sounds crazy, probably to a listener hearing this, but what you are saying is so 100% true. I think these two gentlemen, assholes is what I meant to say. I think we're a little bit before that time, but John Harvey Kellogg and Sylvester Graham, both of these guys, and anti-sex, they know that this stuff kills your testosterone levels. They know that it makes it so you can't reproduce, but there's a huge profit margin, and bam, that's where, if we want to trace it all the way back to there, is it kind of the same kind of people that you're describing?
I guess so. It's Ken Burry asked me that when I was on his podcast almost a year ago, I think it was. And that podcast was what really put the book on the map and shot it to #1 and all like that. But he asked me, he says, Daniel, you're a business person. What is the mentality of big food? What's the deal here? Because, do they know that they're killing people or what? And then I remembered this study that, well, it wasn't a study. It was, Goldman Sachs, the international banker, Goldman Sachs, they had one of their analysts do a white paper, and it was for their biotech pharma companies. And they wanted to let them know that, hey, creating cures is not good for the bottom line, right? It's not good for the profits, not good for the shareholders. And the example they gave was that this big pharma company, Gilead Sciences, they had this blockbuster drug called Harvoni. And that gave I think it was like 98% cure rate for hepatitis C. And when it first came out, it was like $12 billion, but within a couple of years, it was down 75%, and it continued its descent after that. So Goldman Sachs yelled at them and said, you shouldn't have done this. See, what they would have rather than have done is create a pill that they could take once or twice a day, an infusion once a week or once a month. They wanted a profit model that would extend the entire lifetime of the person. They don't want to cure anybody, right? And I'm sure that same mentality goes over to the big food companies, because they have people at the top that, they have shareholders too. And look, it's just, you just look at history, and there's something strange that happens when you get money close to human beings, and they either look the other way or they get involved somehow. And it's a sad commentary on some, but not all. And so that's just the way it be, folks. I mean, you really have to do the due diligence and find out what's going on, where your state of being is physiologically with the testing.
Right. 100%. Thank you so much for that. Quick question for you on chapter 10, if I could, or maybe not so quick, depending on where this goes. But probably my favorite chapter in this entire book, besides the music chapter or the longevity chapter. So we'll get to that one. But personally, I believe that grains are even worse than straight up sugar, like pixie sticks. Like if you have a choice between grains and something that is just straight up maltodextrin, like Swedish Fish or like Sour Patch Kids or something, or whatever. I think that's sucrose, but same idea. So after reading this grain chapter, I'm just kind of curious if you would agree on that. Like, obviously, but both of them are horrible for you. But
well, no, just before I started down that road of the grains and doing that research on that, this Dr. Ford Brewer had even told me, he says, that's I'm seeing, because he's a clinician, he's seeing people all the time. And he says that it's the grains that are even more dangerous than anything.
Yeah.
And so I started taking as you see, my chapter 10 is, what is it? Are you a wheat addict? And in that chapter, as you could see, I have a picture of a guy. Well, it's his skull. He's 100,000 years old. He's got perfect teeth, right? And I asked, well, you think this guy had, orthodontist, floss 3 times a day, whatever? No. And what happened was, when we only started eating wheat and grains about 9 or 10,000 years ago, somewhere in there. And they've exhumed bodies from before and after that. That's why I have that guy's skull in there, and you can see how good it is. But when they started exhuming the bodies after they started eating the wheat and grains, they found all these missing teeth, the tooth decay, all these new diseases have started coming in, not as bad as the last 100 years, but all these new diseases. Their bones shrank by diameter and length. I mean, men shrunk 5 inches, women shrunk 3 inches. I mean, it was just a disaster. And so, coming down the line now, like I said, in the 20th century, we've never had the bombardment of the grains like we do now. And what made it worse was Big Ag came along in the late 60s, early 70s. So it was late 60s. And they changed it all. It used to be, they used to grow to shoulder height, right? And now they applied this thing called radiation mutagenesis and chemical mutagenesis. And that makes it 18 inches. And why did they do that? The seeds are bigger, and that's where they get a more bountiful crop. They got more out of it, even though it's much shorter, because you don't get the wheat and grains from the stalks and the, that kind of thing. It's just from the seeds. So they were able to get a more bountiful crop. But when they do that process of the chemical mutagenesis and radiation mutagenesis, they amp up this thing called gliadin, Gliadin, which you had mentioned.
No, have I been pronouncing it wrong? It's gliadin, not gliadin.
Gliadin is how, if you go on Google and you just, some of these things I have to look up too. Gliadin pronunciation, and then you got somebody going gliadin. So that's how I learned it.
And then if you go to the UK, they probably pronounce it differently anyway, right?
There you go. So anyway, so what does this gliadin do when it's amped up to a higher extent? It attaches to the
so that's part of gluten, right? So if you break gluten down, there's two proteins. There's two proteins. Okay. Tracking with you.
And this one gets amped up for some reason. I don't understand. I'm not a biochemist or anything. But what it does is it attaches to the opiate receptors of the brain, the same opiate receptors as morphine and heroin.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't get you high or relieve pain, but its expression is to make you crave more of the things that have wheat and grains in them, like your bread, pasta, cereal, granola.
So it has all of the downsides of recreational drugs and none of the upsides. Great. Sounds like a great reason to put grain in your diet.
Yeah, so you get addicted to these things, and then you do eat the whole bag of pretzels or whatever it is that you're consuming. So anyway, that's kind of like about the gliadin and the addiction quality of it.
Yeah.
And when Big Food discovered that, this was in the 70s, they decided to put in just about everything in the supermarket. Check out this stat, Colt. The average supermarket has 60,000 products, right? 59,000 contain wheat or some form of wheat. It's like, what? In order to stimulate those opiate receptors, even Twizzlers, next time you're down the candy aisle, pick up Twizzlers and you'll see the second ingredient is wheat.
No kidding.
I swear to God.
Wow.
And then in that chapter 10, you'll see I give the aliases because sometimes they'll change the name of wheat. And so you got to know what the aliases are, and you got to watch out for that so you don't get those addictive products. But stay away from
the like sugar. Then like there's a million different words for sugar, and so it sounds like it's kind of the same thing for grains too. If you're trying to avoid them, it's just like, man, just cut processed food out of your diet and just go meat based. Better yet, do the lion diet.
I'm telling you. Yeah. Well, as you can see from the book, when I first came to this, I found low carb, and then I found keto.
That's kind of what I like about it. It's not a carnivore book, but it's basically the carnivore diet.
I was just like Sean Baker when I was on him. We were talking about it. He first found keto, and he was getting these amazing results.
Yeah,
and that's what I did too. And then I started finding the carnivore.
And you start getting really in tune with your body, and you start becoming aware of plant toxicity where maybe you weren't before.
No, exactly. Yeah. And I had a misunderstanding until I got on with Judy Cho. I hooked up with her, but prior to being on her channel too. But she had me or got me straight on, there's the keto, there's ketovore, which is what Ken Berry calls, and then there's carnivore, and then there's the lion diet.
Yeah.
And whenever I heard carnivore, I always had the misunderstanding that you only eat meat. But then I find that's the lion diet. So that's where I evolved to. I'm carnivore. Because lions, they don't eat eggs or salmon or anything like that, right? But carnivore is just animal products, whether it's eggs, beef, butter, salmon, cheese, whatever. It's just animal products. I mean, I do eat mostly beef and eggs and that kind of thing. And I'll do OMAD on the days that I'm not at the gym, which is every other day. I work out every other day, right? And OMAD means 1 meal a day.
Yep.
It's just, I like to get a longer intermittent fasting type thing in and that kind of thing. So, so I got into that. So I've arrived at carnivore and like that. But started with keto, just like Sean Baker did.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I would describe my wife and kids as both being ketovore. I'm lying right now. Well, I mean, I'm telling the truth, but I'm lying. You were talking about creatine earlier and how it's beneficial for brain health as well as performance. Does it make sense if you're on a very high meat-based diet with lots of more bioavailable types of creatine, maybe perhaps than something like creatine monohydrate? The reason I ask is because if you don't mind, these are the numbers that I found. So for beef, 350 milligrams of creatine per 100 grams. Bison has almost twice that much. Pork has a little bit more, and venison has a little bit more. Moose and elk, super high on creatine too. Actually, much more so than beef. And so, most of what I'm eating right now is I'm packing away a couple pounds of raw moose, and tonight's going to be raw elk. So I just personally kind of feel like that creatine is way more bioavailable than what I would be able to get from something that I'm supplementing. But that's just kind of my speculation, and you're the expert, so I thought I would run it by you.
Well, no, I'm with you on that. And when I add that to a little bit to my coffee, I mean, you know, I do it just for the brain enhancement and the synapses snapping faster and that kind of thing. I don't do it, but you know, another thing is whenever you try any of these things, test yourself. You go, okay, do I feel better with this? Adding 5 grams a day, or
total evidence trumps all. Yeah, for sure.
You know, so if you feel fine with just getting it from your beef, bison, moose, whatever, then great. There's no reason for that. But if you're going to do intermittent fasting, like I do, and I know you do too, I put a little bit in my coffee. That's all, along with the C8 MCT oil powder.
Yeah.
Along with some heavy whipping cream, because fat doesn't break your fast. Mm-hmm. So you can feel fine about doing that. So yeah, no. If you want to do that and you feel great and you feel muscular and going at it, that's because I don't use it for bodybuilding either. But some people need it because, you know, they're on the verge of sarcopenia, which is a weakening, wasting of the muscles as they get into their 40s, 50s, 60s. And they, you know, they're used to just playing with the remote control and not walking or not doing anything. And so, you know, you can use that to help people. They have them start with light weights first to build up their wasted muscles. Give them some HMB and or HMB. That's hydroxy beta methyl butyrate.
I knew exactly what you were going to say. I was just waiting to see if you knew it.
Well, you could probably say it better than I did. You know, so I cover all that. No. Chapter 9, I have cover a lot of science on exercising in chapter 9. So yeah, I cover that there. So some people can really benefit from it. And then after they get to a certain point of development, then they can back off from it if they want. But again, you have to be your own.
See all those notes I just read to you? Bam, in the back of chapter 9 right there.
Oh, man.
Because it was after I read that part that you were just talking about. And then I was like, oh, and so then I just kind of went on this, little research, I guess, splurge on creatine to figure out like what meat sources had the most. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Yeah, no, I agree with you there. If you get enough from your food, it's all ancestral. What did you and I, when you and I were out hunting 3,000 years ago or 30,000 years ago, whatever, what did we do? We didn't
I was looking for the biggest head of lettuce I could find. There it is. Spirit. Before I get away.
Oh God, you're too funny. Yeah. So, there was this one carnivore guy who was challenging me. He says, because I told him, I said, yeah, and sometimes I'll have some berries with, this anti-aging yogurt that I have in chapter 23. He said, berries? You can't have berries if you're on a carnivore. I said, well, look, I'm talking about having like a teaspoon, maybe 5. I said, look, we have to use our common sense here. When when we were out hunting, like I said, 3,000 years ago, and we came across some berries, holy shit. We would tell Uncle Throgmagog and he'd go tell the tribe and we'd all go eat some berries because they were only going to be around for a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
They were delicious. I mean, we didn't say, oh, we're on the carnivore diet. We're not allowed to do that.
Right.
So we have to use our common sense here, And I brought up this, chapter 23 with regard to, it's called maximizing gut health. And there's this amazing yogurt that I give the recipe for. It's a Lactobacillus reuteri. There's 2 specific strains that will relieve any kind of issues that you have, or if you've ever taken antibiotics, because those destroy the microbiome and all like that. So, and there was a big study on those too out of MIT. and they showed all these amazing, incredible benefits. Even the ladies would like this smoother skin. They found that in other words, the healing time of the skin is much faster, and that's what happens with young people, with kids. They scrapes and bumps, and you probably learned it with your kids. They heal pretty fast.
Yep.
And you start to restore that, and people might say, "Oh, well, that's dairy. I'm lactose intolerant." When you ferment, because you have to ferment this, you just get an Instant Pot or a yogurt maker. It's really easy, and you ferment it for 36 hours. It turns it from being a milk product or lactose into lactic acid, which is not a milk product, and you don't get any of the indigestion that you might get from a dairy product for those that are, lactose intolerant. So you get all the benefits of it, and it's just amazing. I would definitely check that out for anybody that's got gut issues or they want to get their skin glowing and everything.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah.
How do grains accelerate aging, and what role does gliadin, whatever we want to call it, play in this? I guess, yeah. One more thing that I still had on that I wanted to ask.
Yeah, it basically comes down to, the grains, they cause so much of the small, dense LDL particles that we spoke about. Then they cause the plaques, and they go through the arteries, and it goes through your whole system, your whole body. And they start to turn on, especially the genetics that you have. If you have something, your parents had this or that. I mean, for example, my parents, they both had the cardiovascular disease. One had the strokes, and the other one had the heart attacks, right? So I knew I had that in my future at some point. So I had to really watch out for all that. And I was eating the wrong things. Mainly, I wasn't like eating candy bars and all like that. My downfall was I was totally bought into the propaganda and the bullshit of heart healthy whole grains, air quotes around the heart healthy. And I didn't know that these heart healthy whole grains, they turn into sugar when you put them in the body. I mean, I didn't know any of that stuff about glycemic index and so on and so forth. And so in the morning, I'd have this granola that had to have probably 60 grams of carbohydrates right there, probably with some HFCS, high fructose corn syrup. And then for lunch, I'd have the, 2 heart healthy whole grains of bread with my low fat turkey sandwich, right? Because it had to be low fat.
Yep.
But I was totally sold on that BS. And so that was my downfall and my creation of the small dense LDL particles, because that destroys everything. Because once it gets in your arteries, as you know, your arteries and your vascular system goes throughout your whole body, and so it's going to cause you to age more quickly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Here again, your intermittent fasting chapter was spectacular. I'm gonna have a meeting actually later tonight, a phone call with this gentleman that I am writing a meal plan for, and so his name is Chris. And he is he's a martial arts athlete, and so I have him doing coffee and keto and BHB supplement, basically exogenous ketones, Richards specifically before his workout, and then he's doing MCT oil that's high in C8, or a powder, either way, kind of. So basically, kind of like how you start your day, and I'm just considering him as being in a fasted state still, even after consuming that before he does his workout.
Yeah, sure. As long as he's not getting protein or carbs.
Nope.
Protein and carbs are the two things that will break a fast. Fats won't. That's why you can feel free to add, 2 tablespoons of butter into your coffee. It's just not gonna. That's not going to break your fast.
Groovy. Okay.
Groovy. That's a word from my era.
I play so much music, man. So we say groovy all the time, and yeah.
I'm way older than you, but that was from my era. Groovy, man.
I know, man. I think most of the guys, a lot of the guys that I play with are your age, though. So, cool, man.
Wow.
Well, so bone broth. What are your thoughts on that, breaking it fast or not? And so I just did a 48-hour fast, and I had it was goose bone broth, and so there's probably like 10 grams of protein ish. I don't know in that.
What I do is see when I break my fast, after I get back from the gym,
I had it like
I'll
halfway through.
I just do say again.
I had it halfway through. I had it after 24 hours because I was going to kill myself if I didn't have something.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, so what I do is because it's so great for the gut and your to prevent LGS, leaky gut syndrome, I'll just take maybe 3 or 4 ounces before I have my whatever I eat, after the gym. And, so it's really, I don't do it beforehand because I try to avoid any kind of, but I only take 3 or 4 ounces, which you can buy at, I think they still have it I don't do that anymore. I used to do that because I think I wrote about that in the book. I started doing that because I was in my process of healing my gut, and I found out about that can have great benefits too. And I think Trader Joe's had that, and you can even make it on, go to YouTube and see. That's the beauty of YouTube, is that you can find all of these amazing low carb, keto, carnivore recipes from all these brilliant people. And one of the things you probably have noticed that in the beginning, I tell the people, you're addicted to something. Everybody has to first confront, what are the things that I can't do without? I can't live without this, and this. That list may be longer for some people, but you identify that, you confront that. Okay, so then your next step is to find delicious but healthy and low carb substitutes for that.
Right.
If you're addicted to this, go online and say, keto version of, to YouTube, keto pizza. Or keto, and whatever it is, and you find
sorry, it's going from like Coca-Cola to a Diet Coke, at least a better step in the right direction. Or
no, we're not talking. That's not the kind of thing we're looking at. We're talking about just making a gradual situation. You want to get something that's healthy.
So like half the people that I know that are straight up keto, like they all love their Diet Coke and their and their coffees.
Oh man, that's bad news.
Yeah. Okay. So then after that, he's got 2 meals. He's lean bulking right now, and he wants to put on about 12 pounds of lean muscle mass by the summer. And so I think that's a kind of an ambitious goal, but I bet he could get there if he's hitting the gym hard. And so I think that's going to set him up great for his workouts, and then for the rest of the day. His first meal is just whenever he's hungry, and try to fit him in within an 8-hour window. So he's still getting the benefits of intermittent fasting. But at least he's spreading it out generously enough so that he can build muscle right now, which is his goal. Right. So he's eating, he's eating elk, deer, moose. I got him on basically like a wild game diet, very similar to what I'm eating right now. And a very, very small amount of butter and tallow to cook his meats in. So his macros are 200 grams of protein, 10 grams of carbs, and 100 grams of fat. So do you think
and why just a little bit of butter? What you said, a little bit of butter to cook it in. Why?
Because he is lean bulking right now, and he's been on around 80 to 90 grams of fat up until this point. And so right now that'll put him at about 100 grams of fat total by the end of the day. So I just don't want him to go overboard and
see.
Keep it nice and tight.
Okay, well, I don't know about that.
Body fat right now is he wants to get down to 5%. So I think this.
Well, make sure you got on my mailing list, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So last night at some point, I sent out this. It's an excerpt from Chapter 9, which talks about getting. Part of it talks about it's in the beginning of Chapter 9 talks about fasting, exercising in a fasted state. And how that's been a secret to Hollywood trainers for many years. And it's how the Wolverine, Hugh Jackman, the actor, that's how he got so ripped, by doing the 16-hour fasted exercise. And so that's very important. And that's, when you get a chance, check that email. You probably got it in your mailbox last night. Or,
thanks for putting me on your newsletter. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, no. So do that, and which I should mention to your viewers too, because at my website, danieltrevor.com.
Yeah, sign up for his newsletter, everybody.
You can sign up for the newsletter, and what you get is it's just once a week. It's a 10-minute read. You can unsubscribe at any time. But when you sign up there, you get the first 48 pages of the book. Because I'm very open to, you want to taste it, see if you like it or not, and then you can go buy the book if you want, because I'm more on a mission to help people not have to go through what I went through, because you don't make a lot of money with health books, believe me.
Right.
I think what I've discovered
everybody thinks we do. Everybody's, oh, you carnivore people, you're just like, you're making money off of people selling ketones. I'm like, what? Really? Like,
oh my God.
Really? No, we are not the ones that are making money selling supplements.
Well, and also with regard to the publishing industry, see, most people, they want to be entertained. And if they're going to read, they want a spy novel or a sexy romance or a action adventure kind of thing. There's not as many people wanting to, read a health and wellness book, right?
No.
So the audience is smaller, even though most of them need it. It's just, all my point is that this is not a money motivation project.
No, yours and my message is very holistic, and you have to put in the work to actually be able to get the results. And most people are looking for a quick fix. And unfortunately, just listening to your doctor and saying, okay, I'll take your statin and not have to stop eating carbs is just way easier of a decision.
Yeah, because look, the book is written from the viewpoint of one of the victims of false data and fake science that's been foisted on the populations and the doctors for 70 years? And it's time we started. I mean, there's a lot of people are turning it around, like our friends Ken Berry and Philip Ovadia and Sean Baker and so on and so forth, Judy Cho, they're all getting on to and Anthony Chafee, of course. We're getting back to what are these bodies used to eating for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years? Well, proven by anthropologists and bioarchaeologists, they said that we became the apex predator on the planet, and we've been eating meat for at least 2.6 to 4.5 million years. Now, I think it's a lot longer than that, but hey, I'm fine with that, 2.6 to 4.5. And you just have to, and there's such pushback on that, because if people went in that direction, a lot of money would be lost by big food, big pharma, and big medicine, because let's face it, a business model is, what is it? A cured patient is a lost customer.
Yeah.
Now, not everybody doesn't have that viewpoint, but, unfortunately some do. And money really can.
Some do, and some don't know any better.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So what you're doing is, I applaud greatly, because you're getting the word out there.
Thanks.
And all that kind of thing. So thanks for doing what you're doing.
Oh, I appreciate you. I can't do this kind of stuff without you and Dr. Chafee and everybody else, because there's no curriculum that teaches this stuff.
I'm telling you,
I hope there will be someday. There's a lot more than what there used to be. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and that's why, thank God for YouTube too, but you have to watch what you say sometimes, because as long as you don't say the COV word and, that kind of thing, because anyway, I cover some of that in chapter 12. It's called Eat the Right Meat, Help the Planet.
Yeah.
Because, everybody's been sold a bill of goods that it's climate change and this and that. And it's just such nonsense. Whenever you hear the words scientific consensus or settled science, just know that what you're about to hear, whether it's from government or media, will be as truthful as, the COV jab is safe and effective for everyone, and it totally stops transmission. We know what a total bunch of bullshit that turned out to be, right?
Yep.
So it's whenever you hear settled science or scientific consensus, just know that the where it's coming from, they want to control you. Mm-hmm. And when I say, of course, I'm talking about the vested interest type thing, because there is some science that we can pretty much say is, if I have this pen, if I drop it, it falls to my desk, of course,
right.
But we're not talking about that. There's a wonderful quote I have at the beginning of chapter 12, and it's from the late great.
Your quotes at the start of every chapter are awesome, and some of them are just kind of jokes and one-liners, and some of them are like they really get me thinking. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Richard Feynman. Yeah, Feynman. Yeah, he won the Nobel Prize for quantum physics, and he said, "I'd rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned."
I love that.
We always got to be able to question, but no, you can't. We have settled science and it's scientific consensus. So you ignore those questions and you just follow what we're telling you. So anyway, like that.
For sure. Last thing is I don't want to keep you too long. On 336 and 337. Probably my two favorite pages in the entire book, to be completely honest. I just love how you have this entire chapter on longevity, and so personally,
well, those two pages about music are just because I have a musical background, and you do too. You're a musician, so I just had to do that because that's where I live in music. I just
Well, so what's your musical background then? Like where have you played? We didn't I wanted to get into recording and get on topic sooner rather than later. But before we hit record, I heard the names Michael Brecker and some other really Billy Sheehan. Like, oh my God, dude! Like some really cool names. So yeah, who have you played with?
Oh wow, well like I said, I'm a lot older than you, but I grew up in Philadelphia, and it's a very soulful town. And so it was jazz, funk, R&B, soul. I grew up on Stevie and Shaka and Luther and Earth, Wind and Fire and, all those, and as well as all of the jazz greats. And Michael Brecker and I were best friends in high school.
Wow.
And if I wasn't at his house, he was at my house, and we would go to these gigs and we would play and everything. And because he was, he was going to be the next Train, John Coltrane.
Yeah, man. I transcribed a couple of his songs when I was in college, actually.
Really?
And it was after he'd already passed. And so I just never was aware of him, while he was even still alive. So hearing this is wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, no. Yeah. And he and I was going to be the next Freddie Hubbard or Clifford Brown, which were the big, or Lee Morgan. Those were the big jazz trumpet players of my time. Yeah. I mean, I like Miles and everything, but I always liked the more bold sound of the trumpet, and so he made it and I got distracted. Anyway, but yeah, I had a strong musical background, and even now I have to listen to music every day that moves me. Sometimes, almost every day I weep.
It sounds really woo, but for those that are listening, he's backing everything that he actually has backed everything that he's saying with science. Because when you listen to music and it makes you more relaxed, helps you get through your day. It's a common characteristic of people who live to be 100 because they keep their hormones in check and have a lower stress levels or do a better job of managing their stress, and music is just one of the ways that's been scientifically proven to help you do it.
Yeah, and I think I have in those 2 pages about how they have if you listen to music while you're working out. I mean, that's why I crank it. I'm funking and getting down
me too.
during my workout, right?
It's not loud enough.
It helps build what's called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, when you build more brain cells. I think I have that in those 2 pages there.
Oh, I'm going to tell that the next time my wife tells me to turn it down. I'm just going to tell her I'm building new brain cells. I'm sure she'll be happy to hear that.
That's too funny. Yeah, it's just part of your aesthetic. It's so, you have to find music that you love, whether it's country or funk, R&B or heavy metal, whatever it is. Yep. And then because when I first get to the gym, I warm up with some, I have this machine where it's an ab machine where you lift up, you hold onto the handles up here, and your feet are hooked up into the thing, and you come down, right? But I do it I have a couple of favorite tunes, and I'm just doing it. Every beat is to that. Every movement is to that beat, that tempo. So, and there was even another study, I think, in those 2 pages where they found that if you get the same thing, if you do the movement of the exercise along with this great music, like whether you're in a cycle class or doing the Zumba class or whatever it is. It's just, I have all of those things in there on those 2 pages. And again, depending on which version, there's 2 versions of the book. It might be 2 pages off. It might be a little off from 335 or whatever you say, whatever pages you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I love on page 336, music can improve everything from positively affecting your brain to lower stress, from energy to endurance to Alzheimer's disease, and even to help promote premature infants in ICOs, lower their pain and stress. That's amazing.
ICUs, internal, babies in ICUs, If you choose the right gentle music, music is just, it's one of those universal aesthetics that I think I like. I said something like in the beginning, I've only met one person in my entire life that didn't care for music. And I everybody else just loves music. If it's right on that wavelength, the wavelength that you enjoy, listen to it.
Yeah.
Because I listen every day. I listen to something where I will weep because it's so beautiful, or I'll just, I'll be getting down, I'll be getting down. I'll be busting a move. I gotta bust a move.
For sure. I think one of your best pieces of advice in the book, besides the entire thing, is fake it if you must, and you will quickly discover that merely forcing oneself to smile or laugh or listen to music does go a long way and towards gaining back control of your feelings. So just know that you will get through it and eventually look back and laugh.
Yeah, that's right, because you want to get control over your own emotions, because especially, when you're in a bad mood, it's not fair to the people around you.
Right.
Just like we use deodorant and mouthwash, it's a social thing. You don't want to be in a bad mood. So force yourself to laugh, and you'll soon stop frowning, and force yourself to, just be happier, and you'll be surprised at how you'll get control over that.
Yeah.
So the next time that thing hits you, whatever that is, you go, okay, I'm not doing this. Where's the Laurel and Hardy movie? Where is the, I'm going to force myself to laugh or whatever, or remember that funny moment, and just snap yourself out of it.
Yeah.
It's just not welcome to your family, friends, and environment.
Shitty situations are made shittier with shitty attitudes. That's what I say.
I'm telling you.
It's not half as bad as you think it is if you just smile and just don't bitch about it.
Just know that a month from now or a year from now, you're going to look back and go, I was bugged about that. It's like, you just got to get bigger than it.
I think fasting is a good exercise for that too. I've been told that my emotions are better when I'm fasting and when I'm on a strict lion diet, like with no caffeine too. I think that probably has a lot to do, and that probably helps quite a bit with it. But but especially whenever I do a prolonged fast, like there's points where like I'm just pissed off and I'm like angry and like I'm hungry, like I'm not gonna lie, and then like but I just have to remind myself, and this quote here kind of makes me think of this, is that if I can just get past that 15 minutes of being hungry and not feeling good, that the next hour after that, I'm going to feel great, just because I got past that hard part in the fast, wherever it was. And so it's easier said than done, but that's been something that's been particularly helpful to me. And then Hebrews 11:1 is one of my favorite Bible verses, and kind of says the same thing. But it's all about faith, and you just have to know that you don't feel good right now, but if you like, you'll get through it if you just believe that time will pass, and then you'll be proud of yourself and happier. The fact that you didn't fall off the wagon or
you can conquer it, and you always come back.
Right. Well, cool. Last one. I respect your time so very much, Daniel. I just want to thank you for this 90 minutes that we're on right now. This has just
Wow.
been everything is as joyful as I was hoping it would be, and I've just learned so much. But your bio in the back of your book mentions anti-aging nutraceutical products. Now, I'm just going to ask of curiosity what that is.
Oh yeah, that was back in the 2000s. I financed, executive produced, and even was featured in some infomercials for products that I had developed with a partner, and I don't do that anymore.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah. That was. I'm just giving you what you're seeing there is the bio of some of my background.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you again so very much.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you having me, and keep up the great work and spread the word on how to get people healthy, metabolically healthy.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
You have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I'm sure we'll talk soon. I hope so. The sooner the better. And
sounds great, man.
Thanks again for all you do and for the message that you preach, man.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And on that note, for this week, we're going to call it a wrap. I know, a cheese wrap or an egg wrap, of course, not like a flour tortilla or anything, because that'd be way too many carbs and way too many lectins. And so thanks for listening, everybody. Make sure to let us know what you thought. Feel free to shoot either Coach Richard or myself an email. You can find him at admin@supersetyourlife.com and rich@theketopro.com, myself as well. And so you can send us a DM on Instagram. I'm at Colt Milton. He is at Richard Anthony Smith. We offer one-on-one nutrition consultations and monthly coaching services for those who are serious about getting some real results. First call, if you've never booked with either of us, is always free, of course. If you're one of our listeners, we'd love to hear your story, answer your questions, and help you out in any way possible. Carnivore coaching has been a cause worth dedicating our lives to. It's who we are, and we'd be honored to help you experience what this lifestyle has done for us, our families, and our clients. Thanks a lot, everybody who's been subscribed and listening since the very beginning. And for those who have recently joined, your ratings and your reviews and shares are oh so helpful. Other ways that you can support this show is we'd be honored to earn your business in the area of skincare and supplementation, either one of those. So check out the show notes for what we have there. Carnivore bars. This is really exciting. So I've had 3 of these things. These are so damn good. But as I was editing this podcast, you know how I'm like always multitasking, right? And so I've been emailing Mr. Philip Meese of Carnivore Bar, the best tasting pemmican bar on the planet, as we will soon be interviewing him discussing the inspiration behind this revolutionary product, especially for athletes like me who are on the Lion diet. Lots of people like Dr. Anthony Chafee's a big supporter of these two, and now I see why. And so there's no preservatives in these whatsoever. I didn't even know that it was possible to have a bar like this that doesn't have any preservatives in it at all. It's just tallow, beef, and salt. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And so you can head over to carnivorebar.com and the code COLT10, COLT10 will save you 10% off on that. Stay tuned for more on that and the conversation with Mr. Meese, because this gentleman was a combat medic who served in Afghanistan and returned with gut dysbiosis after his health was derailed by preservative-laden junk foods, antibiotics, and so he's got an insanely inspirational story as well. Big shout out to our listener Susie Banuelos from San Francisco, California, for placing an order for Purely Tallow, for our Purely Tallow skincare line. We represent a skincare line that has 100% animal ingredients and no plant ingredients. And so my favorite product at the moment is actually the chapstick. It's because it's so cold up here. And I'm not even using it on my lips, or at least not at the moment. I don't feel like I need to. But everybody that I know has really chapped up hands right now because it's because of the extreme weather conditions. I haven't even had a workout in my own gym because it's basically just an igloo and it's beyond hope of even like having it heated. So most of my workouts have been by the fireplace just because of the extreme weather conditions. And my wife is a total champ. She's actually getting up early every morning and going to the school and working out and getting her workouts in. So anyway, the chapstick, my dad taught me this when I was a kid. Put chapstick on your fingers when it's cold outside. So I've been doing that, and still not putting any plant products on my skin. It's been a couple years now. I've seen nothing but improvements in my skin quality. So that's my testimonial to that. It's a family-owned business as well. And again, the code COLT10 will save you 10% off of anything from Serena's website at purelytallow.com. All right, thanks a lot, everybody. Share this with a friend if you found it helpful. We'll catch you next week on session number 93. Until then, say this with us: eat like a lion, live like a lion. Love you guys. God bless, and have a good week until then.